Hi guys, my name is Megan, and today we are going to be talking about women and specifically women in graphic design. So, when looking for women in design, you often come across many of the same names like Paula Shear, Sylvia Harris, and Sipe Pinellas. Now, while these women are amazing and spectacular in their designs and have really changed the game for women in design, why is it we mostly only hear about them? Why is it that we only really hear about them in passing and aren't actively taught about all the other women in design that are obviously there? Women make up 50% of the population and statistically live longer than men, so why don't we hear about them? If you paid attention in your high school history class, you would know that women, like many others, are victims of oppression and have found themselves constantly having to fight for equality. We, unfortunately, live in a white man's world, and that can be seen by looking back in history and seeing that almost everyone in power was a white man. This can be said for design history as well. Most designs that are described as changing design history were designed by men, and mainly white men. Men were the ones with the brilliant ideas and the opportunities to show them to the world. Almost all the iconic and popularly used typefaces today are created by white men, and regardless of if the design has a very sketchy past, people still use their typefaces today. Gill Sans is a typeface that many designers know and use actively in very well-known brands, movies, and government agencies. But what people don't realize when they use this typeface is that they are using a typeface of a child abuser. Eric Gill sexually abused his daughters, and that is a fact that people seem to be able to completely overlook. This horrifying fact should be an immediate deterrent from using this typeface, as if you know this, then you immediately associate the content or organization to sexual abuse. Most, if not all, who choose this typeface would not want this even remotely associated with their content. But as they say, ignorance is bliss. But for those who don't know this, the Homeland Security is just a government agency, and movies like Toy Story and Ferris Bueller's Day Off are just childhood movies we watched with friends and family. The audience doesn't know that the stink the typeface carries, but why not dig deeper and find a typeface that doesn't have the stink? Why not why not pick a typeface designed by a minority or female designer? Why does the typeface have to be designed by an older and not with the times designer? Design has come a long way since then. Why not choose typefaces that best reflect the changing times today than those of 100 years ago? Much of design history is focused on the idea of what had the most influence, and yes, that is designs primarily by white men, but that doesn't mean that designers of other ethnicities, colors, and genders just didn't exist. Maybe their designs just didn't fit the mold. Maybe they were in the shadows because a man pushed them there, and they didn't want to be perceived as bitchy, aggressive, or abrasive when the same actions done by a man would be deemed as powerful, confident, and successful. Rebecca Wright, a co-author and designer of Graphic Designer Surveyed, stated, it the graphic design industry may recognize the value of talent and craft, but it rewards confidence, charisma, and chutzpah. And the uncomfortable truth is that these attributes do not always sit as comfortably with women as they often do with men. Women are taught from an early age to be people pleasers rather than entrepreneurs. Girls watch movies about princesses being saved by princes. They don't see women in these films as being successful or powerful on their own. They see women who find happiness in having a family, which is fine, but when a woman with a successful career is shown, she is often shown in a negative light. She is deemed unhappy, and it often results in her finding love with a man at the end of the movie, or she ends up having a makeover to actually be happy. While it is proven that changing your appearance for the better does make you happier, most media that shows girls or women changing their appearance is not for their personal benefit. It is for the benefit of others around them. the Cinderella story idea. While this is starting to change, there's a whole generation entering the workforce that grew up with movies like Sleeping Beauty and The Little Mermaid, where the princess just needed a kiss and then everything was happily ever after. This is an unfortunate reason why even in design school, Rebecca Wright found, after 15 plus years in design education, my experience is that female students are still less likely to want to grab the limelight, less inclined to push themselves forward and to self-promote. Now girls are being taught that this mentality has to change and that they are just as capable, if not more, than boys. But this is a systemic problem, and it takes more than just teaching, but rather showing them that things can be different. Thankfully, this mentality is changing, especially in design, but the problem is still a patriarchal mentality so deeply ingrained. Women are still ostracized for wanting to have children or wanting to be a working mom rather than a stay-at-home mom. Women have to work a lot harder and give up on the fact that people won't always look at them in a positive light. Women are less likely to want to push themselves forward due to these social norms and expectations pushed on them. Women in design are no different. In 2015, Rebecca Wright and Lucienne Roberts published Graphic Design Surveyed, a statistical book where they surveyed graphic designers in the UK and US to gather information. A group of 525 graphic design students enrolled at Central St. Martin's for a BA in graphic design were surveyed and found that 372 of those students were female, making 70.8% of the program female. This is not uncommon today, as around 60% of graduate design degrees go to women according to the U.S. Department of Education. But this split is not reflected in the professional workplace. This split actually appears to be reversed, as a 2010 research study by the UK Design Council revealed that only 40% of designers working in England are in fact female, and only 11% of today's creative directors are female, according to the 3% movement, an organization dedicated to making 50% of the world's creative directors female. So why, in 2020, are we still behind the times? Why are we still 31% behind being equal for creative directors? Why are women being overlooked in comparison to our male counterparts? The perception of domesticity and patriarchal views of how women are supposed to act are still there. If you view this exact same situation side by side of a man and a woman, it is more than likely a man will be treated differently from the woman. And this gets worse when the woman is of a different ethnicity, color, or identifies within the LGBT plus community. Sexism is ingrained into us through media and our parents and their parents and their parents before them. Regardless of if we see it or not, simple things like not making CPR dummies female when at least 50% of the population is female and still chokes, as well as male, or not taking into account that females have smaller hands and the increasing phone size may in fact bother some women, or the blatant female brand targeting through the use of pink and price markup. Women are constantly being marketed pink pens, pink face masks, pink books, anything imaginably that can be pink at a higher price because it is for her. And we just act as if nothing is wrong. Most men I talk to don't know about the pink tax, and that women have to pay extra for feminine sanitary products we have to use monthly, or else we will be ostracized as well. More than 50% of the population has to pay extra for something that helps with a completely natural event. And if you don't use them, then you are deemed unclean. It was not until November 2020 that a country was able to make all feminine products free to the public. Scotland made history as being the first country to make this possible for women. Countless people do not understand that these are just some of the problems women face as they are just not talked about. Sexism is there, whether it smacks you in the face or if it barely tickles your fingertips. For decades, women have been trying to change the narrative for the better, and we are. But who are some of the women that came before us and paved the way? Who are the women that made it possible for women to even be creative directors or work in the field of design? There are women in history who may have been overlooked or you may never have heard about if you didn't actually dig and look for them. As a woman, I should not have to actively look for female graphic designers who I can relate to, who lived in history and influenced the design I wish to someday. I want to be able to find more female designers in history who aren't immediately recognizable names and don't require a specific Google search to find. I want to be able to open a design textbook and see a woman on the same number of pages as a man.